Welcome ladies and gentlemen to Jai. I am going to talk about the worst freelance job that I have ever had. What would be an appropriate thumbnail for this? Maybe something like, or like,
This is going to be a comprehensive review.
my name is like,
Shut up!
like. So before I start, this is probably going to be a boring story for those of you who have nothing to do with freelancing or don't care about videography or videography freelancing. Probably going to get bored to death, but it's a dramatic story. If there are people who are freelancers like me, and if you can relate to bad incidents and bad jobs, then hey, it's gonna be an interesting story. To give some context to this whole gig, I used to freelance for this production house. I'm not gonna say the name because you shouldn't. Just to be decent, I'm not gonna say their names. I am never going to work with that production house ever again because of this one incident, and you guys will know why. So I've been working for this production house as a freelancer after hours because I had mine a 9 to 5, and I still do have a 9 to 5, which I love. And I was working on the weekends for dirt cheap, right? I knew the owner of the whole production house personally. I met him outside of this whole, partnership. Not even partnership. Before I became a freelancer for these guys, so I knew him, and I knew the guy who was in charge of the accounts, I think, of the production house personally. So I was, I felt very, safe around those guys, and I knew they, so at least I thought they were decent people. And from the get-go, I told him, guys, this is what I told him. You should. Which is, I usually would not say this to anybody because I knew these guys personally, I did say this, but you should never say this to anybody that's hiring you. But I kind of did. I said, you know what, guys, I'm not interested in making money. This is something that I do on the side. I just, want to get involved with any video stuff because I know I do videography on the side, this and that. And and I was true to my word for a year. I think over a little over a year, I was, like doing work for them for dirt cheap. Usually when you're a freelancer, you bill this production house for the gear that you bring, and you bill them for the transport, and then you bill them for your time. So I was only billing them for my time. I wasn't interested about making a profit. I just wanted to come exercise my videography there, here and there. And over time, I used to every week on week I used to start getting calls, and they used to tell me, there's a gig here, there's a gig there, can you go here and take a few videos. So these guys were making a wave of online promotional content because they were getting pretty viral as well, the whole production house. Didn't have any problems for a year, but after about a year, you know what, it got a little too intense because I was doing a lot more gigs, and I said, guys, this is kind of eating into my life right now. If you want me to continue, I'm going to have to charge you my actual rate. So I doubled my rate with them for the same thing. And I was don't get me wrong, I was doing things for dirt cheap in the first place, so me doubling the rate didn't just brought me to what the normal industry standard is, at least for like a beginner videographer. A year and a half later, I get this one gig, and it was a bit of a weird phone call saying, there's this gig. It's a 3-day long shoot. We kind of have to go outside of Colombo. They'll be providing accommodation and food and all that. The standard stuff. They'll provide transport, accommodation, food. All we had to go is shoot, and it was a day shoot. And you know what? I've been working with these guys for such a long time. I was like, just pay me the usual rate that I normally take for a 3 to 5 hour shoot. It doesn't matter. Just pay me that amount take it as the day rate anyway. Because I remember it was a long weekend, something or that. So yeah, that was what it was, right? And so on the day of the shoot, I remember us leaving early in the morning at 6 o'clock or something like that, because we had to travel for about 2.5-3 hours to the place. Now, this event was a race, okay? It was a race starting in the middle of the country and ending in the coastline. And I didn't know that at first, because at first I thought it was okay. It was it was just an event that went on for 3 days or 2.5 days. And then there was a race that was a part of the whole event. So I remember going there. The whole team was there were two. I think there was a Jeep that I was supposed to be in at all times, and then obviously the driver for the Jeep, and there was this one photographer, and then there was the head of the group who was hired by this production house. He was an employee there, and I was the freelancer that was shooting. He was in charge of the whole thing. And then there was this other guy who was in charge of, I guess, all the accounts. So yeah, that was the basic structure of it. And for me, I couldn't care less. I was like, what, I'm gonna. And then halfway through, the guy in charge, the accounts manager or whoever, suddenly said that he has to leave or something, and he introduced me as the guy who was in charge of the whole group, or the guy who was going to make sure that all the videos are taken. And for me, I was totally fine with it. I couldn't care less. I can help these guys out, no problem. Even though I was just there for the video, guys, I was carrying easily 12 kilos of gear on me because I had all my gear on me. I had my laptop on me on top of that. And I was, I came prepared, luckily, but he said that I'm going to be in charge. Now, the guy who works for this production house was there with us, and I was a little confused as to why I was being made the person in charge when he should have been the person in charge. I'm just the freelancer, the guy who's doing the videos for this, and they're going to take it off me. That should have been my first red flag. But hey, I knew these guys. These were decent people. They're not going to pull a fast one or put me in like a weird spot. So I was just helping this guy out. I thought the guy in charge was leaving, and because he was my friend, or I had known him outside of this whole videography thing, that he's asking me to do a favor for him. So I had no objection towards it. So the shoot starts going on for a while, and I'm running around shooting stuff. Oh, and there was a drone guy as well. So we were running around shooting this and that, and I was speaking to the guy, like the brand or the person who was doing the event. I was speaking to them and walking through them, okay, what we're going to be recording, because the guy from the production house, the accounts manager, told me to keep in touch with him. So I was speaking to him, and he was not a very friendly encounter, which I realized afterwards why, and you'll find out as I'm narrating this story to you why they were a little animosious towards us. I don't know if animosious is the word, but there was a bit of animosity there. So, but I was talking to him and telling him, okay, this is what we're doing now, this is what we're doing now, this and that. And I was also in the middle of taking videos. It was a lot of work. And I remember they started ending, we started having lunch, okay, as they promised, food was given. And then the day went on, and all the people who were taking part in the race were not there, and they're all gone off. So the beginning part was like a festival-like thing where people were, having races in that area, and then they all left. So I assumed, okay, end of day one. And then I remember walking back to this house. I assumed that we were getting ready to, call it a day. Today we kind of got into the Jeep, all of us. And then we started driving towards the middle of nowhere. It was a rainy day. It was pouring rain. And then we kept going on. And then then I think somebody spoke to me that, okay, this was a 36-hour long freaking race. And I was in a little shock. I was like, okay, you know what? These guys, why didn't they tell me that this was not a 1-2 day shoot? It was a straight 36-hour shoot, because the race was starting outside Colombo in the hilly areas and finishing at Colombo. And this wasn't a normal race where if you were cutting across like terrain that didn't have roads. These contestants were literally plowing through jungles. And that's why we were in a Jeep. And it all made sense to me. We were in a 4x4 Jeep because we were going to tail this competition from start to finish, and we had to shoot everything. Yeah, it occurred to me that it was a 36-hour race. I didn't know how to react. And also on top of that, now, it's not like this production house didn't know. And now I found out this fact even in a more shocking conversation that I had with the driver. Because the driver of the Jeep, he had come on a previous day to scout out the entire route with the people in charge of the event. And the guy who was supposed to be in charge with us was apparently constantly falling asleep on the route. And the client and the customer saw this multiple times, that the guy was sleeping. And he had called the production house and complained, saying, your guy is sleeping on the freaking route scout, or the scout, I don't know what it's called, but he was asleep the whole time, wasn't mapping out the route. And that's why that guy put me in charge, because they didn't want to work with that person who was initially put in charge. And he's the guy, he's the employee, he's the one who's paid to do that job, not me. I'm the guy who's, first of all, working at a shitty rate, assuming that these guys would have disclosed everything to me. And I realized I'm going to be in a 36-hour I wasn't prepared at all. Luckily, I had, I was wearing a pair of shorts and not my usual jeans, because if it's like a 5 to 6 hours, we were long. Luckily I was wearing trainers, and I wasn't wearing like shoes or anything like that. And I wasn't wearing I was wearing a freaking shirt. I was so hot. And I'm sitting in the back of my accommodation, which was going to be provided for me, and the accommodation was just like a tiny section of the back of a truck. And this 4x4 was, plowing through jungles, through terrain that a normal car or a normal Jeep would not be able to get to. This was a Defender, an SUV that they had no air conditioning, nothing. And on top of that, they had no way of backing up any of their footage, right? Usually, if you're a production house and if you're doing this is not a tiny event. This is easily a $1 million event. I'm pretty sure it was high stakes. You come up with ways to back up footage, and all of these guys backed up. Luckily I had my laptop on me because I had come prepared, and these guys just backed up all their footage onto my laptop, which I was again annoyed with. You know what, if there's a brand, there's an account manager, and there's a guy who's in charge of us, he should at least have a laptop with a freaking SD card slot that he can use to back up data, but he didn't even have that, and the company hadn't provided that for him. And in the middle of the night, I realized that, okay, I've been made the honorary account manager, but the backstory is the client had complained about the guy because he was falling asleep on the job, and they've appointed a new guy, i.e. me, to represent the production house there. And I was already, okay, these are pretty big clients, and I was already making a bad name for myself by being a full-time employee for them, or supposedly being a full-time employee for these guys. Not just the main client, the entire team of the client knew that this guy was asleep, and they had all complained. And now I am the guy representing, and I had no idea of this. I thought that I was just doing these guys a favor. And okay, you know what? Fine, let's just do this. And then we started going through this jungle. It was pitch black, okay? Because we were going through places where there was no electricity, and they were not even freaking ready with the gear that they needed to shoot in the dark. Like, I remember we had to ask the official photographers for a light just to shoot this damn video in the dark, in the middle of the jungle. And it was so embarrassing. The whole thing was an utter mess, and we looked stupid. And on top of that, this guy who was in charge of us, he wasn't doing a very good job with making sure that we were fed and we were, watered out, or, we were looked after. He was, we need to get this shot, we need to get this shot, that shot, this shot. And we went easily to 11 o'clock without, before we even got a cup of tea or got anything, because we were in the middle of a jungle. Guys, these guys went on a location shoot. When time came for dinner, just to, and mind you, we were not informed that we had to carry or we had to be ready for it. And they weren't ready themselves. So you can imagine, I've been shooting I started the day at 6 o'clock, now it's like 8. We've been shooting straight for easily 13 to 14 hours, and we are not even halfway through. And then I realized we're going through a jungle, and then there are leeches. Dude, if you're hiring a bunch of people, and you know that there are blood-sucking leeches in the area that you're going to shoot, and I for one can't stand leeches. They horrify me. I had to constantly be on my feet. I was while shooting, making sure that I don't get any leeches on me. And you can come prepared for shit like this. You have special socks, shoes that you can wear so the leeches fall off. You can take a precaution, but you need to tell the guys. And what frustrated me even more was that these guys went on a location scout. The guy was obviously asleep, but the driver had to fill in. Again, the driver was doing something that he was not paid to do. He was the guy who knew the route. He was the guy who informed everybody else, and they didn't tell me that, guys, it's going to be a 36-hour long-ass shoot, so you need to carry water, you need to carry food on you, you need to look after, you should at least, or if they're not going to tell us that, they should, account for it and make sure that they pay, because we were running on fumes. I remember I was dead asleep. I mean, if I knew it was a 36-hour shoot, I would have, rested properly the prior. No, the day before was a normal working day, and I slept after work, so we couldn't, mentally prepare ourselves either. And the entire team just turned on this guy. They were playing tricks on him, and we just wanted to finish the shoot and just get paid and go. But I was so frustrated. It occurred to me that the account manager didn't give me the whole story, thinking that I would have doubled my price if I knew the entire story. So he didn't tell me the entire story. He just told me, it's a 2.5 day shoot, we will give you accommodation, and we will give you transport, and we will give you food. That's it. And I'm plowing in the middle of a jungle, knowing this information in my head. Why couldn't anybody just tell me that I should bring, I should be wearing t-shirts, or I should be wearing something comfortable for 36 hours? Because you can't change there. Well, because there was no changing room, nothing. Somebody could have told me that I should have at least carried some snacks on me, or carried a water bottle on me. Because we were seriously running out of those things, and there was not a shop. I remember we were driving through this tiny shop in the middle of nowhere, and we were so glad it was open. We bought an entire... a wreath, that's called wreath of bananas, and just buns, and just ate the crap out of it. And the worst part is the guy who was in charge didn't have the fucking cash to buy the food for us. So we were pocketing. It was an utter mess. And it annoyed me that they just wanted me to agree to a certain amount of money at the beginning, and then just once see what happens afterwards. And that was such a horrific experience for me that as soon as I came back, I told those guys, because I knew it was a big account. That event was a huge event. And there's no way that they would... and I knew that these guys are getting paid stacks of cash just to cover the video on it. And he had... The reason everybody turned on this guy in charge of this production house during the middle of the shoot is because apparently now I realize that everybody had been played out just to make sure that they don't give a fare, or they don't tell them, okay, you know what, if you want me to do a shoot like this is my price. No, they wanted to trick everybody there. The photographer, the drone guy, he was pissed. The driver who was in charge of the Jeep, he was pissed because he was struggling to get his cash cleared. I was pissed. Oh, it was an utter nightmare. And as soon as I came back, I was like, screw this, screw professionality. These guys just, and it's not, I've been working for them for a year doing freelance work. And they just decided to pull this fast one on me. And I was annoyed. And I said, guys, you need to pay me twice as much as what we initially spoke about. Because this happened. Because they lied. You guys lied to me. You guys didn't let me prepare. Guys, I hate leeches. Right? If I knew that there was leeches in this trip, I wouldn't have taken the job. Period. If I knew there were leeches on this trip, I would not have taken the job. That's how much I hate leeches. It wouldn't have mattered how much they paid me. I would not have taken it. I have I have this huge phobia about leeches. I can't stand them. And I was easily trapped in them inside a jungle for 12 hours. Easily. So I came back. I had all the footage on me and I told them I refused to give them a single file until they paid me and they brought me the money and I gave them the file, and that was it. I refused to do any work for them after that. I remember getting called twice or thrice even after that, and I said no, I just don't have time, or I just said I can't, because that is crossing the line. That's crossing the line of basic human courtesy, just to tell a certain person to be ready for 36 hours straight, to be ready with food, water, to be ready with at least, like have something to apply or to spray on for leeches. And the worst part is, I still irk. Like this the client who was in charge of this event, I avoid him to this day when I see him in public, because I didn't know any of this and I agreed to be the representative for the production house because the guy fell asleep. How embarrassing is that? How embarrassing is that the client saw one of your guys just falling asleep on the job? Anyway, there you have it, guys. That was the worst experience I've ever had. It was a bit of a long video, but you know what? I kind of had to put it out there because it was years, maybe like 2 years ago that I did this, and I had to put it out there because, hey, you might know these guys personally outside of work, but understand that business is business, right? And even though these are nice, decent people, or the people owning these productions are very nice, decent people, when money is involved, sometimes decency goes out the window, and they just be assholes, honestly, it was if I had been told, I would have enjoyed that shoot and I would not have charged a penny more or a cent more, because it was it should have been an enjoyable shoot. It was a nice experience, but it was ruined, and it would have been just a whole lot better if you was honest with the guys. If you're hiring somebody, just be honest with them, and I'm so glad I didn't put anything into writing, or I didn't put my rate into writing, because they would have taken me through a ride. So yeah, I hope somebody can take something out of them. Guys, decent people, yeah, they're decent in everyday life, but when you're working with them and there's money involved, these decent people are not that decent. So think about it. My God, it was the worst, absolute worst experience as a freelance job. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Guys, like the video, leave a comment about any of your experiences with production houses like this. I'd love to know any other stories that you guys have. And please don't ask me who this production house is. I do not want to be associated with that, anything with that production house, with the people in charge, the people working there. It was an utter embarrassment and a massive regret. That's it.